The frame and panel might be one of the simplest ways to elevate your craft. Guys, check that out. Come on. The entertainment factor I get from folks making things about the dumb things I say is 11 out of 10. And this is a perfect example. My buddy Mary Sai saw the table build video and she decided to do a t-shirt that says a cabinet maker's Prius and has Violet Beauregard's initials on the back. Come on. That has nothing to do with anything, but it did make me smile. So thank you, Mary. Now, today we're making a frame and panel. Rather, I should say, I'm making a frame and panel. Y'all are watching me make a frame and panel. But this is a thing that I do believe strongly, that the frame and panel, when executed correctly, can show a level of craftsmanship and intention that few other components in woodworking can. Or maybe I should say instead that a frame and panel, when executed poorly, unintentionally, can leave you feeling wanting. So I am going to show you how I make my frame and panels, but more importantly, I'm going to show you how I make the decisions about the components for the frame and panels. So let's get into it. So here's the situation. I've got this chest I'm working on and I need to make a bottom that fits inside here. I do have these internal components I need to consider as far as where my rail and style placements are going to be, but this is also one of the visual keys on the inside of the box, right? You open this box up and it's gonna be this big space where you see this frame and panel, and if it feels lesser than, sloppy visually, then it takes away from the experience of the piece. You have this big, beautiful outside with all of this very intentional grain pattern and book matching and lines, and then you open it up and the frame and panel kind of looks blah. It feels like the rest of the outside was for show and the inside matters less somehow. And that's not the experience you want to give somebody that's interacting with the objects you make. You want them to open a piece up and it's kind of this continual revelation of every time you open a drawer or open a lid and it's all just as cared for as the exterior. So how do we go about doing that? How do we express that frame and panel matters just as much as the exterior of the box? Guys, I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'll continue to say it till you hear me. It's all about grain selection. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I have this piece and it has these two components. These are two rails for the frame and panel that I'm gonna cut out. Now I absolutely could just joint an edge and rip the piece to width and let it be whatever it is, and the grain would be running in that direction a little bit, not much. And I think for most folks that would probably be fine. This is what you do in a commercial setting, right? It's about efficiency of movement and efficiency of material. But we are not in the business of efficiency. We are in the business of beauty. You are in the process of making beautiful objects. That's your goal. Now in this particular case, I have a piece that's a little bit wider than what I actually need, and you can see that I've got these two pieces running at an angle in order to follow the grain line, so that in the final components those grain lines are parallel to the edge and it's not drawing you off in one direction. It's not pulling your eye to one side and giving this imbalanced feeling. Now when it comes to the styles, which if you picture a door are the vertical pieces, right? They're generally speaking the longest components of a frame and panel. It's even more important that you choose your grain carefully because that can really affect the visual nature of this frame and panel. If your grain is straight, then there's nothing to look at and your eye is drawn inward to the panel, which is usually the decorative element. If your grain is all over the place and one is running out in that direction and one is running kind of down, like your brain doesn't know what's going on and so it loses focus on the panel. Now you can't always have perfectly straight grain because that's just not the way the world works and we're working in an organic material. But if you can make it feel balanced, if you can at least make your grain lines move up and away from each other, then your eye is at least drawn down and inward to the panel again, or vice versa. In this particular case, I want those lines to be as straight as possible because the panel itself is very decorative. Well, that was scary. The blade popped. This is a thing that happens from time to time. And it never gets less scary, I will say that, because it's just this loud bang that happens. You see that? That mark right there, that grind is where they welded it together. So that tells me that the grind is what popped, not any defect in the blade that we put in it. It's fine, I'll replace it, but we won't be ordering from them again. All right, we've got all of our components cut to size, and now it's time to start the... Thought we agreed to put our phones on silent while we're filming. Yeah, but what if it's a client calling? Was it a client? It was a robocall. Dude, we really need to get you signed up for Incogni. Because they bully robocallers to stop calling me? No, because Incogni gets your personal contact information out of their databases by reaching out to data brokers on your behalf, requesting your personal information be removed, and dealing with any objections on their side. For those of you who don't know, data brokers aggregate your personal information such as your names and aliases, social security numbers, login credentials, location histories, and online activity, all of which is available for purchase. Who are you talking to right now? You ever wonder why you look at a table saw on the internet one random Saturday morning and then for the next week you're fed nothing but table saw ads? It's because data brokers are selling your online activity to companies. Deleting browser history? Now you could reach out to every single one of these companies and request your personal information be removed, but there could be hundreds of brokers selling your data. Luckily, Incogni will reach out to them on your behalf and get it removed so it can't be sold to shady companies, which means no more interrupting robocalls. So they do... Oh my god. If you want to try Incogni risk-free for 30 days, you can click the link in the description below, and the first 100 people to use my code ENCurtis will get 60% off. As I was saying, now that we have all of our components cut to size, we can start our joinery. Now, a standard frame and panel is generally just going to be done with stub tenons, which is what I normally do because it's really easy to set up your rabbets for your panels and then use that same setup to cut the tenons on your rails. It's fast, it's easy, it's strong enough for an application like this. If we were building something that needed to be more structurally sound, like a door, we would go about it in a different way. But for this, more than enough, especially when you consider the fact that this is also going to be sitting in a rabbet inside the box, so that's going to give it a lot more structural rigidity. So my point is, just don't overthink it. Stub tenons, plenty strong for an application like this. Now, this is a super simple process, so I'm not going to walk you through it in great detail. All I'm doing is using a flat top blade to cut my grooves. I'm going to cut one wall, then the other wall, then rip out the center. It's 3/8 wide, 1/2 inch deep. Then I'm going to cut all my rabbets on the router table, which I'm not going to walk you through because I've already done a video on that. So you can click the link whichever corner it's in. I just need to, let's just knock this out. Dry fit time, baby! Let's see how we did. All right, well, we've got this thing dry fit and it's looking good. All our joinery is nice and tight. I've got a nice little bit of expansion here for the panels. But let's take a look at the grain situation. My book matches look nice and clean. My center lines are in line. And there's a lot of movement going on the top section of this box, which I really like because there's a lot going on the interior over here of the actual box itself. I've got drawers and dividers and yada, yada, yada. To have a lot of visual movement at this end is a really key, I think, to a balanced design. Now, if we stand this up and take a look at it upright, you can get a better sense of that grain movement I'm talking about. These lines move up following the style and then fade out that way, which mirrors kind of this same action that's happening in the panel. So that's really pleasant. And that's one of those ways you can use the grain orientation to compound a visual effect. Whereas if they were reversed, then you'd have kind of these competing lines, which one's doing this and the other's doing this, and it's so pay attention to those minor details. So friends, that's that. I'm gonna leave it there for this week because there's still a lot to do on this. There's edge detailing, there's surface prep, there's glue up, there's final fitting, there's cutting rabbets on the outside of here to fit it into the cabinet. So there's a lot to do, and if I were to do that all in this video, this would be a 45-minute long video. But the hard part is out of the way, and that's the thing to know. And this video is more about making sure that you understand the visual components and the design components of making a frame and panel, rather than the technical how-to side, which you can see in a million different places on YouTube. This is about grain choice, about balance, about how it fits the piece and what you are or are not attempting to do as a designer, builder, furniture maker, etc. In this case, careful grain selection, balanced grain selection, visual balance between a lot of physical components over here and a lot of visual busyness over here. All of these things play into the decisions you make on a daily basis as a furniture maker. So that's that. Friends, I hope it was helpful for you. And if you like this type of video, this kind of mix of how-to and design conversation, do let me know down in the comments. And until next time, cheers.